This week in CIST 1602, we're going to talk about Chapter 2, Compliance with Laws and Ethics. Once you read the chapter, you should be able to differentiate between laws and ethics, describe the ethical foundation, approaches that underlie modern codes of ethics, look at relevant professional security organizations and their roles and relationship to organizational InfoSec. You also should be able to describe why ethical code of conduct are important to InfoSec professionals and their organization. Identify significant national and international laws that relate to practice of InfoSec, and explain the challenge and methods associated with the management of digital forensics in an organization. So we'll first start talking about ethics in InfoSec. We start off by defining that laws are going to be drawn from ethics of a culture. While the ethics, they're going to be based on cultural norms, which are the fixed moral attitudes or customs of a society. So others define it as a set of rules we should live by. The 10 commandments of computer ethics: thou shalt not use a computer to harm other people. Thou shalt not interfere in other people's computer work. Thou shalt not snoop around in other people's computer files. Thou shalt not use a computer to steal. Thou shalt not use a computer to bear false witness. Thou shalt not copy or use proprietary software which you have not paid. Thou shalt not use other people's computer resources without authorization or proper compensation. Thou shalt not appropriate other people's intellectual output. Thou shalt think about the social consequences of the program you're writing or the system you're designing. Also, you should always use a computer in ways to ensure consideration and respect for your fellow humans. And this is from the Computer Professionals for Social Responsibility. So there's an importance of education. It is very important in leveling the ethical perceptions in a small population. Employees must be trained and kept up to date on information, security topics, and also the expected behaviors of an ethical employee. So to deter unethical or illegal behavior, keep in mind it's the responsibility of the InfoSec personnel to deter unethical and illegal acts. We can do this by using policy, education, and training on the technologies, controls, or safeguards in order to protect the organization's information and systems. There are going to be 3 general categories of unethical behavior that organizations and society should seek to eliminate. That includes ignorance, accident, and intent. Now, deterrence, that's the best method for preventing illegal and unethical activity. And please note that laws, policies, and technical controls are examples of deterrence. Now, with that, the conditions under deterrence will be successful if these laws and policies have penalties associated with them, such as the fear of the penalty, the probability of getting caught, and also the probability of that penalty being administrated. There are a number of professional organizations that have established code of conduct and code of ethics that members are expected to follow. These code of conducts can have a positive effect on an individual's judgment regarding computer use. Now, by not following these, keep in mind that the loss of accreditation or certification due to a violation of code of conduct can be used as a deterrent. Certifications may or not affect the earning potential of the practitioners, but keep in mind that it does remain the individual's responsibility of security professionals to act ethically and according to the policies and procedures of their employers, the professional organizations, and the laws of society. All right, InfoSec professionals, managers, they must possess a rudimentary grasp of the legal framework for which their organizations operate. There are a couple different types of law. We do have constitutional law, statutory law, regulatory or administrative law, and you have common law and case law. Keep in mind is we got civil laws. They cover laws pertaining to relationships between and among individuals and organizations. Criminal law we can think of as addressing violations harmful to society. And that's something that we actively enforce and prosecuted by the state. Tort laws are a subset of civil laws. They allow individuals to seek redress in the event of personal, physical, or financial injury. We have privacy laws. This is something you'll see with a lot of organizations collect or trade or sell personal information as a commodity. And while they do this, a lot of people are looking for governments to protect their privacy. Now, keep in mind that privacy laws define privacy as the state of being free from unsanctioned intrusion. That is not an absolute freedom from observation. There is a privacy of customer information law that prohibits the sale of proprietary information and the use of such information for marketing purposes for common carriers. This law also prevents disclosure of information except when necessary to provide services or if it's something by the customer's request. The Federal Privacy Act of 1974, that regulates the government's use of private information. It also prevents the release of individuals' information without the consent of the individual. There are some organizations that are exempt from some of the regulations of the Federal Privacy Act of 1974, the Bureau of the Census, National Archives, U.S. Congress, credit agencies, certain court orders, and a few more. 1986, there was the Electronics Communication Privacy Act. They addressed the ability of the federal organizations to perform different types of wiretaps and the circumstances under which the wiretaps are legal. Some other privacy laws include like the HIPAA law. It's active intended to protect the confidentiality and security of healthcare data. There is a FERPA law, a Federal Education Privacy Act, protects the academic records. We also have the United States copyright laws. Understand that copyright laws will protect intellectual property, provides conditions for fair use as well. So, Fair Use Act, that says that material may be quoted for the purpose of news reporting, teaching, another type of activities, and that's as long as the purpose of that is for educational and not for profit, and the use is not excessive. All right, breach laws. This is a law that specifies the requirements for an organization to notify affected parties when they've experienced a specific type of loss of information. So these laws most of them require some type of after breach support from the organization, whether it's credit monitoring, or somehow they're letting you know the action they take to fix the incident and prevent it from happening again. There's not a national breach law, but there are bills and proposals being reviewed by Congress. International law. So a lot of our domestic laws do not apply. to international trade. That's going to be governed by international treaties and trade agreements. There's a lot of them because we have a lot of political differences and the complexities of the relationship between the nations. Something may be protected here will not be protected maybe overseas. So there are just a few international laws that's relating to privacy and information security. It is the responsibility, though, for security professionals to understand the state laws and regulations, and also ensure that their organization's security policies and procedures comply with the laws and regulations. For example, the Georgia Computer Systems Protection Act of 1991 contains various computer security provisions and established penalties for using IT to attack or exploit systems in an organization. The Georgia Identity Theft Law of 1998 it prohibits the business from discarding records containing personal information unless certain precautions were taken. So it is your responsibility to know the laws and make sure that you comply with the laws and regulations. All right, a variety of groups have created standards that offer guidance on how the information security should or could be applied to industry segments or geographical areas. Some industries have security requirements that are defined at least in part by the government regulations, such as banking, healthcare, education, for example. One of the things, maybe the payment card industry data security standards. There's something that's not a law, but it's a set of industry standards that are mandated that for any organization handling credit, debit, or specialty payment cards. So that'd be an example of the standards. When we talk about policy versus law, policy functions similar to laws, but keep in mind that ignorance of policy is a viable defense, while ignorance of the law is not. Now, some of the key elements for an effective policy: make sure that the policy is uniformly enforced for all employees. That's one of the key policies. Now, with a policy, keep in mind you want to make sure that all individuals who are expected to comply with the policy knows the policy. They have copies of the policy. It is read by the policy. It's understood by the employees. And it's acknowledged by the employee. Think of this kind of like the syllabus that you guys signed at the beginning of the semester. Your first week's assignment was to read the syllabus and then take the syllabus agreement quiz, saying that you've read the syllabus and you acknowledge that you have read it. Same situation here with your policy. You have your employees read the policy. If training is needed, hands-on training, you train them on the policy, on the technical controls, and then have them acknowledge that they have read the policy. Organizational liabilities and the management of digital forensics. All right, digital forensics is based in the field of traditional forensics, and it involves applying traditional forensic methodologies to information stored in electronic format on any of a number of electric devices. It may range from computers to mobile phones to portable media. So e-discovery, that's going to be the use of digital forensic tools and methods to extract information that could be potential evidence related to specific legal actions. You can take digital forensics too and use it for two key purposes. So digital forensics can be used to investigate allegations of digital crimes, and also to perform a root cause analysis. So if you find an employee acting without authorization or with authorization, performs an illegal or unethical act. Keep in mind that the organization can be financially liable for that action. The liability could be increased if the organization refuses to take measures to ensure that every employee knows what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, and the consequences of illegal or unethical action. And also, you'll make sure that your company does their due diligence. Okay, that requires that the organization makes a valid and ongoing effort to protect others. Now, when a company finds itself in the situation where it has to deal with a policy violation or law violation, it must appoint somebody to investigate it, an individual investigator. The investigation, how it proceeds will dictate whether or not the organization has the ability to take action. If it finds evidence is found that sustains the accusation. The law enforcement may be called into an organization, so the investigator must also document what happened and how. The evidence, it may be something that's brought into court, so you need to make sure that you have the investigation techniques documented. You must make sure that you can recreate the evidence. So digital forensics, that involves the preservation, identification, extraction, documentation, and interpretation of digital media for evidentiary or root cause analysis. As we've already discussed, that it can be used for the two key purposes. So investigates allegations of digital malfeasance, a crime against or using digital media, or perform a root cause analysis. So in there they look to see how was this done. Examine the path and methodology used to gain unauthorized access. A lot of organizations will not have a dedicated permanent digital forensics team, so that they will need to use their InfoSec group to be trained to understand them and how to manage digital forensics. Now, this is something that you send your employees to training for, whether it's a regional or national InfoSec conference. You can look for digital forensics track. So when an investigation starts, many of these start with an allegation or an indication of an incident. So with law enforcement, the investigation agent would create an affidavit that's signed by the approving authority, but it becomes a search warrant. What that does, it grants permission to search for a specified location and seize items to return to the investigator's lab for examination. The process should be the same for corporate environments, although the name of the documents may change, and maybe different verbiage is used. When we're talking about digital forensics, all investigations should follow the same basic methodology. You did identify relevant items of evidentiary value, EMs. Then you acquire or seize the evidence without alteration or damage. You want to take steps to ensure the evidence is at every step verifiably authentic and is unchanged from the time it was seized. Analyze the data without risking modification or unauthorized access, and then report the findings to the proper authorities. My biggest piece of advice on this is to make copies. You want to clone the drives. You want to make copies of everything. Never work on the original. You want to be able to recreate the data. So our evidentiary value, our EM policy should specify who can conduct an investigation, who may authorize the investigation, what affidavit related documents are required, what search warrant related documents are required, what digital media may be seized or taken offline, what methodology should be followed, what methods are required for chain of custody or chain of evidence, and what format the final report should take, and who it should be given to. All right, so we reached the end of chapter 2. Once again, read the chapter. If you have any questions, please let me know.